Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Your Career Unscripted. I'm your host, Jane Cortez, and I interview business leaders and rising leaders on their career journey to inspire you to build a career on your own terms. I'm excited about our guest today. Our guest today is Gideon Spitzer-Williams, a marketing leader with over 13 years of experience in brand, experiential, and product marketing. As Global Experiential Marketing Lead B2B at Canva, he drives B2B experiential strategy, creating marquee events that connect Canva with decision makers and drive pipeline, brand perception, and customer engagement. For Canva, Gideon worked across brand and experiential strategy at Snapchat, Tinder, Archrival, and Red Bull. Gideon, thank you very much for coming on my podcast. I'm excited to talk to you. I was looking back to see when we first connected, and it was a few years ago. I think I was looking to get into brand marketing and was trying to find people who had kind of a creative track in marketing. And I remember you gave me really helpful advice, which I very much appreciated. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, it has been a few years, hasn't it? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I would love if you could break your career into a few chapters. And could you tell us what you learned in each chapter?
Well, so I was an environmental engineer by trade in college, but Red Bull was my first chapter for sure. I was there for about 8.5 years. 2 of those were in college as a student brand manager. So while I was learning my engineering craft, I was also representing Red Bull on campus. And that was a pivotal moment for me where I decided to go marketing versus engineering, and then stayed with the brand for 8 years in total, eventually leading a large part of our collegiate marketing program for the US. So that was roughly 300 student brand managers at like 280 schools. And that was a moment where I really kind of just unlocked my passion for marketing. And I was so excited about getting on campus, meeting with students, seeing things brought to life was just really exciting for me. I had a small chapter at Archrival, which is an experiential creative agency. I was there for about 1.5 years. I wasn't that good at it. I was an ACD, and I really kind of just struggled with that like initial idea. But then once you have that nugget, I'm really good at taking it and growing it. So that didn't work out, but I did meet my wife there, so that was definitely a plus.
Worth it.
For sure. Well worth it. And then, from there, I really started my sort of tour de tech, where I was at Tinder for 3 years, Snapchat for about a little over a year, and then now have been at Canva for just over 2 years. I would say at Snap and Tinder, I focused a lot on product marketing and your broader brand marketing campaigns. And there I learned a lot about just what it means to be a tech company, what's valuable to them, what drives them. That was very much on the B2C side. Now I'm in my final chapter, so far at least, in my career at Canva, where I really focus on the B2B side of the business. And that's something that we've been growing over the last couple of years. So it's been a really exciting time to be there.
Thank you for walking us through that. I have so many questions. Can you talk about majoring in one thing and going into a career in something else? I'm wondering if you found that challenging and how you moved through that. Because I think it can be brave to kind of pursue something different than your major. I think that people often feel like when they major in something, they have to keep doing it because they put so much time and effort into it. And so it's really difficult to kind of take the leap and do something else. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that experience.
Yeah, I wanted to be an engineer because mountain biking is my sport, and I worked at a bike shop, and I was always really good at taking things apart. Sometimes struggled with putting them back together. Thought engineering was a good place to help me sort of close the loop there. And while I was at school, I saw the Wings team on campus. So people who drive the Red Bull car with the big can on the back, and Red Bull always invested a lot into mountain biking. So I was very familiar with the brand and the product, but had never once thought of marketing as a path. Immediately asked them when I could, if they had a job on campus, and I had to wait about 1.5 years for that. But from there, it sort of unlocked this creativity that you don't really have as much of in engineering. Engineering is very much process oriented, and you're solving really large problems, but there's usually like a clear logical path to get there. Whereas marketing, just the creativity of it, I felt like I was really good at bringing that to life. So there was a point where I had to make a very clear decision of, yes, I'm going, the marketing path. And really, the only thing in my mind at that point was working for Red Bull, not even another company. I did make a conscious effort to finish my degree and got my certification, which was a brutally awful 8-hour test that I had to take. So now I can practice as an environmental engineer in the state of New Hampshire. Um, but if I had failed that test, honestly, I probably would have never taken it again because I knew that marketing was my path, and I was very fortunate to find something that I was so passionate about very early on, really at the beginning, very beginning of my career, where I know a lot of people don't have that and make that switch later on, and I think that's totally fine. I just feel really lucky that I was able to make that move and to work for such an amazing brand, and then amazing brands after that.
And when you think about the different chapters that you mentioned in your career, do you feel like you built different skills in each chapter? And what did you learn about where your strengths are generally when it comes to your career?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think I've tried to be really selective about where I go next, or the projects that I work on, or the things I work on when I'm at a certain company. So, for example, Red Bull's marketing is very untraditional than your like Johnson and Johnson or whatever, right? And I think that helped set a precedent in my mind of being a little more outside of the box and not thinking in that classic, um, like the 3 or 4 P's of marketing or whatever it is. Like I was never taught that traditionally, so always had a different kind of goal set in mind. When I went to Arch Rival, that was because I was working with so many agencies, and I knew that at Red Bull, I really had begun to master how to work at Red Bull and do brand marketing there. But I didn't know the agency side as much and that side of the business. And while it was tough to be there and I did struggle with that job, I'm glad I did it because I think now I work with agencies a lot better and understand the struggles they're going through, how to deliver a clear brief, like things like that. Um, when I went to Tinder after that, I was always the guy that like people would ask for dating advice for whatever reason. Um, so it was kind of like on brand for me to go to Tinder, but uh, I I was really passionate about digital marketing, or really interested rather in digital marketing, and I thought it was really interesting to connect a platform that was really on your phone to doing things in real life and bringing that to life. Whereas Red Bull was like a physical, can that you can hold, right? So that kind of taught me a different skill set and also how a different kind of company monetizes and thinks about how to drive the business forward. And then at Canva, it was really understanding the B2B side of the business. So acquiring that new skill because those B2C and B2B work very, very differently. So it's really understanding what drives an actual buyer, a budget owner of a company, what drives the sales team internally, and how to work with them credibly. So they've each intentionally taught me different skill sets that I think that has made me be a little bit more of a generalist, but my ambition one day is to be a CMO somewhere. So I think that will just help me work with different sides of the business wherever I may end up.
I appreciate you sharing your CMO dream. I also appreciate you sharing that you've struggled in one of the roles at Arch Rival. But I'm curious to ask you about that because if someone is listening to this and they're maybe in a role where they feel like, I don't feel like this is a great fit and I'm nervous to move on to the next thing, or I'm nervous that I don't have a place in this industry. I'm just curious if you could speak any more to your experience feeling like something wasn't a great fit, and also if you could say anything to that person listening who's maybe on the struggle bus of it.
Yeah, of course. I think high level, there's two different ways I look at it. The first is I have struggled in every single job I've had in one way or another. When you're learning the job, learning new skill, growing, whatever, like sometimes that's not so easy and it's hard and you kind of have to muscle through it. That's how I thought Arch Rival was at first. And then there was a time where I realized, hey, this just wasn't for me. I went to Arch Rival because I wanted to understand the agency side. And I thought it would be really interesting to work on multiple brands at once. So, being at Red Bull for 8 years, I knew the ins and out of just Red Bull, and I could speak as if Red Bull were a person. but I wanted to be able to switch back and forth. And I also thought that I was quite creative, and I thought there was a lot of interesting things I could do there. What happened was the role I was in was part art director, part creative director, part experiential manager, and you kind of had to wear a lot of hats, which, in all of my jobs, I've worn a lot of hats. But again, it kept coming back to getting a brief from a client and starting that kind of awkward phase where you're just brainstorming and just thinking about, okay, like I have 10 ideas and I'm going to show the client, 2 or 3, and these are the best ones. I just struggled with that and had to lean on my manager, or coach, as we call them at Canva, as well as other ACDs that worked at Arch Rival. And yeah, just, after multiple conversations, be it on whether it be in, performance reviews or just asking for feedback or talking about like what worked and what didn't for a certain project or campaign, it became abundantly clear that I really struggled with that specific point, whereas they would add me to projects that were a little bit later on in their life, and I would excel and be able to run with them and everything would work great. So I think it was just really hard for me to come to terms that perhaps I still consider myself very creative, but not for that like initial nugget. And you don't have to be good at everything. And I think that was something that was really important to me. I think the other thing, and this is something I've grown to realize much more over my career, I refuse to be in a job that doesn't make me happy and bring me joy. I think there's a lot of people that just do a job from 9 to 5 or even longer than that to get a paycheck. And I realize, financially, sometimes you need to do that, but that sounds awful to me. And I will forever just not do that. Because
Same.
yeah, because you're spending the majority of your day doing that. Like, why would you do something that is not bringing you joy, or you're not having fun? People don't, it's weird that people don't associate work and fun, because life should be fun. So I started realizing that more and more. And then eventually, it was time to part ways. And I went to Tinder and brought Arch Rival over as a client very quickly. One of my first projects, because it was really important to me to continue that great relationship with them. And still, my boss from Arch Rival is still one of my mentors to this day.
That is such a great story. I thank you for sharing that. And also, I appreciate you sharing that you've struggled in all the roles you've had, because same. And I don't think people talk about that often. I feel like when you're on a team, you're in a meeting and you're new to a job, you aren't looking around thinking, well, like, okay, everyone here is struggling with something. And you just feel like, okay, I'm struggling with something. I think people are going to hear you say that and be like, oh, okay, maybe it's okay if I'm struggling with this new role, or I'm struggling in my thing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I hope they take something from that, for sure. I think it's totally okay to struggle. I think there's a point where you realize, okay, maybe this needs to end and I need to find something else. But that's fine.
The in between, I'm leaving a job and I'm starting a new job, can be a really difficult time. If someone is listening to this and they're starting a new position, and they're in their first week and they're trying to set themselves up for success and meet people and all of that, what advice would you have for them in terms of a mindset coming in somewhere new? They might be nervous. They want to put their best foot forward. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, great question. 2 things. I think first, even taking a step back, take time off between jobs. Like, do it. You will never be able to do it ever again. Between Snapchat and Canva, I took 3 months off, and it was some of the best months of my life. So
That's
if you can
awesome.
do that financially and all that good stuff, like, do it. People who only have a weekend between jobs, that's rough. I hope to never have to do that. I would say when you're at a job, imposter syndrome, so real, right? You're brought in to help with some part of the business, and depending on the role, you start to get asked questions and for your opinion pretty quickly. And I think being vulnerable and being able to say, hey, I'm not sure, I don't have a position on this yet, or I don't know, in those early days, while you gather the facts, I think is really important. I think some people, and I've been victim to this too, jump right in with a position without really knowing the full context, the background, how the business works, whatever it may be. I think that's a really important thing. I think the other one is to say yes, and just like my personal strategy usually is to sort of just throw myself at everything and see where I can help, respectfully, of course, but like if an opportunity comes up, like I want people to quickly see me as a team player and someone who's willing to chip in. I think there's a balance between doing that and also holding your opinions for a minute. But I think those two things really have helped me um, get comfortable with everyone fairly quickly, and yeah, learn the job as much as you can. I mean, a lot of the jobs that I've had, actually every single job I've had, is like you kind of just get thrown into the fire. And that's really terrifying at first when you have no idea what anyone's talking about. But as long as you're okay with that and like kind of can tell yourself, hey, this is going to happen, it's going to be all right. Just give it a couple weeks and you'll get your bearings. That's always been really helpful to me.
I think that's great advice to listen and learn and to kind of be a sponge. I
Just sponge it
appreciate
up.
that.
Yeah.
Sponge it up. I'm curious, can you talk about your role at Canva? How do you spend your time? It seems like a really cool creative job. I'd just love to hear more about it.
One of Canva's core tenets is to be able to do the best work of your life, and I truly feel that. As cheesy as that sounds, and I know a lot of companies say that, but I think it's been a journey here for sure. But I've really loved it. So right now, I lead global experiential marketing for our B2B motion. So that's really thinking about how we show up with a B2B lens, usually like an executive type audience. So whether that's at Canva Create, our main product event that's happening mid-April at SoFi Stadium in LA, or how we show up at Advertising Week, like kind of more industry events, or my personal baby, which feels like it takes up 1,000% of my time lately, is Can Lion in France in late June.
Awesome. Okay, so if you're working on one of those different events, what's like a day in the life? Like how are you spending your time? Can you walk us through a day?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. Yesterday was a bit of a wild one, so could probably talk to talk to that. Um, I think I'm working on multiple projects at a time. Right now, my two biggest focus are Canva Create and Can. Um, what I love about my job, and many things I love, is that I am simultaneously able to be sort of in the weeds and think as detailed as, what's the branding on the cups, to like very high level, what is our 2 or 3 year event strategy in B2B. Balancing those two things gives me a lot of joy, and it's very easy to be sucked into the details. And that's something that I've had to work on. Has been a growth opportunity for me my whole career, is to like be able to step back. And I feel like at Canva, I've been able to do that a lot better. Yesterday, a lot of agency conversations. We have an agency that we work with, same agency on both of those projects. And for Canva Create, it was thinking about how do we bring an executive dinner to life for roughly about 75 C-suite VP level marketing executives that we're bringing to Canva Create. And from an executive dinner standpoint, usually they're just very basic, like rent a really nice restaurant that has a really great chef. It's a little bit more pay to play. And our perspective and my perspective is how can we make this more immersive, doing a lot more storytelling. So without spoiling the plot and revealing everything, we're doing it at Sony Studios, so rich for storytelling. And it's in a room where a lot of sets were painted and built out for some really iconic movies. And we're thinking about how we can tell, how do we tell Canva's story sort of within that environment, and how Canva can help you go from, that spark of an idea to scaling it into a full campaign. And that's everything from, our host is a magician and former creative strategist at Comedy Central, to how do we have a Marilyn Monroe troupe that is singing and dancing as a surprise and delight, like things
Sounds
like that.
fun. Yeah, yeah.
So that was one conversation. The second one was about Can, and that was thinking about, we're starting to build out our beach space for next year, and we're starting to hit all these different timelines. The first timeline is more from a fabrication standpoint. So like, what are the structures actually going to look like without the branding, but the team in the UK needs to start building them. So we were going back and forth on, one of the elements is a podcast studio that we've been talking about, and how do we build it out? Is it worth it? What are the trade-offs? Another one is like um, a confetti shower that we've talked about. So like weird, wild ideas. When can we
Confetti
bring
shower.
in
Cool.
a surprise drag queen performance?
Nice.
But ultimately, all of this to help drive the business and do this in a way that is very much like bringing Canva to life, but in a very, very unique Canva way, which I think is really important and something we've been working on for a while. Is thinking about, how does Canva show up in a B2B lens? Because it's like when you go from when you drive into the San Francisco airport. I don't know if you've ever seen these memes, but it's all AI ads and they're all saying the same thing, right?
Hmm.
And B2B is sort of similar, as everyone's trying to like convince you to buy their product essentially. So how can we do that in a very rich storytelling kind of way at something like Can Lion? So yeah, yesterday was a bit of a, a weird and a fun one. But that's great. And like something like today, I'm re-reviewing our measurement strategy and how we, benchmark for the next couple of years against our events and the goals for it. So every day is very different, which I absolutely love.
I can see why you really enjoy your work. Like it
It's
sounds like
fun.
something that could be really fun. Yeah. And it also sounds is it very hands-on? Because it sounds very like hands-on, talking to people, working on different things. Do you feel is that true for that type of role?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, there's a lot of internal and external stakeholders, right? Internal is, anyone, our executive team who's going to show up at our space, our sales team who has to have meetings for something like Can, to our creative team who's helping build the assets and sort of guiding our agency. There's also, of course, the actual agency that I work with, and multiple roles within that. So it's certainly very hands on and, for better or worse, extremely detail oriented, to like bring events like this to life. So yeah, and I love that like high touch part. I think that's something that I've really excelled at. It'll definitely, at the same time, it'll definitely like eat you alive at times, and
Mm.
my aura ring reminds me of that frequently. Um, but yeah,
Which
it's
part
it's
of it?
um it's great.
Like the detail orientedness?
Just details, so many meetings. I mean, something like Can Lion, which is really a 4-day event. Last year, we built it out in about 3.5 months. It was our first year really going big. And that was really, really tough. And it truly needs a year planning, which is what
Mm.
we've given it this year. So, but even now, in February, we are shifting the schedule of what happens every day and throughout the day already. So there's just like so many different details and um, knock on effects. If you move the podcast studio here, something else needs to move and go over there, and all of that thing. So I actually think my background in engineering has helped me a lot with that. Think through like processes,
Mm.
and be really really strategic in that sense. But yeah, it's a wild job, weird, wonderful, all the things. Great humans to work with on externally and internally. Very lucky.
And how different is experiential marketing from brand marketing and product marketing? Can you talk about the differences if someone's listening to this and they know they want to be in marketing, they find it creative, they're interested in the function, but they don't know the differences of the different kinds of marketing you can do? Can you kind of break down the different experiences that you've had?
Sure. I mean, I think every single thing is a version of brand marketing at like a very high level. Every brand touch point with a consumer, whether it's in the product, on a paid media ad, organic social, or an experiential event in person, is like holistically brand marketing. They all have their own flavor, of course. For me, when I was working through brand and product marketing, it was really, especially at Snapchat and Tinder, it was very much digital campaigns. So we would have a concept and, campaign strategy, idea, whatever it may be, and we'd think about how to scale that across a bunch of different platforms. And on the product marketing side, that could be about a new feature. Like one of them at Tinder was it was called, what was it called? It was selfie verification, something like that, where basically you would verify that you are the person in your profile. And that's like a very much a product marketing thing, and thinking about how to drive uplift in product usage for this specific feature. Whereas for Snapchat, I was working on a campaign that was more in the trust and safety space. That was how to both educate teens how to stay safe on Snapchat, but also tell their parents that we're telling their teens how to stay safe. Um, so those things are very different. They come to life in similar ways on digital platforms. What I missed from it was that in person. Like, to me, there's no better feeling than working your ass off on an event and like actually being there in person and seeing it come to life. You get that a little bit when a digital campaign launches and you see the stats coming through, but like you don't see the joy on someone's face, right? And it's a little harder to do that on on a digital surface.
One of the questions I was going to ask you was how AI has impacted your work. It's interesting hearing you talk more about how you spend your time and just the in-person nature of what you're currently doing, like doing physical events. It's a really cool type of marketing to be doing right now. I'm curious, like, how has AI impacted your work, and how has it impacted how you think about your career and like the future of marketing as everything is so in flux?
So in flux. My God, is it in flux? It changes every day. It's hard to keep up. I would say it has impacted me so positively. I use AI, my bud ChatGPT, every single day, all day. Apparently, I'm one of the top 10 users on our marketing team somehow. I saw like a couple months ago in some stat, but I use AI as a thought partner. Everything from, hey, I'm building out this really high level strategic brief for like what we need to do in a year, to help me write this email or help me write this Slack, to a leader, or just even a peer. And I think that has helped me move a lot quicker and get through a lot of that busy work. Like, the amount of time we've probably all obsessed over how to send an email to your CMO or whatever, and like you rewrite it and reread it 1,000 times. Certainly still do that, but AI can help me get there a lot quicker. So there's like very
Mhm.
simple things like that. um, I think, I've sort of taught my chat GBT, but how to be an event marketer, and how to also simultaneously think like a CMO, which is the audience, which is how I want to be represented, but also the audience I'm going after. So it's helped me a lot from a persona standpoint. I think what's been really challenging is that it keeps, like, AI in general, keeps shifting on the impact on both like marketing as a whole, but also our society. There's times when people are like, "Oh man, we're gonna give it too much and it's gonna take over," right? Like the Terminator.
Mhm.
And then there's also times where it is so valuable and it's changing the world for better, and we're going to have self-driving cars that can pick up our kids from the school or whatever. So there's all these different ways that it's changing. And I think um you know in my role, Canva as a whole, and I think every company is constantly figuring out like what's our place in it. We know that there is a place for sure, but it's just like, it feels like for me and my role specifically, it's just hard to keep up, I think. And we try our
Mhm.
hardest. And I don't think it's just me that has that problem. I think everyone has that problem, which sort of makes
Mhm.
me sleep a little bit better at night, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all trying to figure out like how to adapt and learn from it. But yeah, it's been really, really exciting, and especially to be at the forefront of that with Canva and some of our tools, has been really, really impactful to me, to see it kind of grow and come along.
I use Canva every day in my consulting work and my work at UT slash
Love.
that was made on Canva. Everything I do has been made on Canva. So
We appreciate that. I'm glad you love using it. It's really an amazing product.
yeah, I do love using it. I'm also curious, can you talk about, so you mentioned you want to be a CMO. How do you think about your role now and what you can do to achieve that goal? Do you think about that strategically when you're deciding on your next role or when you're communicating with people. I'm just curious how you think about getting from where you are now to where you want to.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, every day. I think right now kind of in this interesting place where like I really do love what I'm doing. I know that I can't do this forever to be a CMO, and at some point maybe I'll grow out of it or whatever the right word is. Who knows? So I feel like I'm in this kind of interesting balance there. I think what's been really valuable to me is to be really transparent and honest with my coach and leaders at the company. So Canva, we're really fortunate that like all of our leaders are very open to having a chat, every single one of them, right? And I've had some really good ones and tried to be as proactive as possible to be very transparent of like, hey, I love what I'm doing, I want to keep doing it, but like this is where I want to go someday. So would love to just get your thoughts of how you got there, or maybe how I could get there. um, and I think especially to be a CMO for me, it's not a linear path, right? I've worked on product marketing and CPG, tech, B2B and B2C. So I kind of keep moving around different things that interest me, more senior things each step of the way, which I think is really important. But I hope that, yeah, my next role will get me closer to that path. I don't know what that next role is just yet and what that would look like at Canva or somewhere else. Um, but I also think that's okay because I do think it's really important that you're not just skipping around from company to company.
Mhm.
Every year. I've had a couple moves, but I personally am like very loyal to the brands that I work at. So the Red Bull for 8.5 years, still drink the product multiple times a week. So yeah, I think it's I definitely know that I want to get there. I don't have the exact path, but I think that that's okay, and that's something that I've kind of come to terms with and yeah, a bit more comfortable with than probably I was um, earlier in my career.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. In talking about the different chapters that you've had, what do you think you've done in like interview processes to help you get some of the roles that you've had, whether it's Canva or Tinder, any of them? Do you think you've done anything specific to stand out? Was it preparation? Because I'm sure there's people listening to this who are like, how do you get hired at these places? Like, the job market is so hard. Um, I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah, great question. Job market is hard. In my experience, it's never not been hard. Maybe it's particularly hard right now. I think that there's two levels to that. The first is getting your foot in the door, and the second is actually being in the interview process. Getting your foot in the door is really challenging, and I know you and I have talked about like you kind of just applying to jobs and they just sort of disappear into
Yeah.
some black hole, right? There is a level of that, and at some point it is a numbers game to some point, some extent rather. But I think some things that have just simple tricks that have been really valuable to me is apply. This is like a very tactical thing. Apply within an hour or two of a job going live. And I say this as someone who has been a hiring manager before. It's really hard to get a role approved and to
Mm,
get a company to be like, yes, you can hire a person. So you're very excited about that, which means that you want to see the people that come through immediately as the job goes live. So my opinion is that first day, if not that first hour that something goes live, get your resume in there and apply. And then from there, a little bit of a sales trick. They talk about multi-threading a lot. So that's like you reach out to someone, but you're also talking to someone in a different department and you're sort of having like multiple different conversations with people and you hope they all converge. I think that is really important. Harder to do probably earlier in your career when you don't have as many connections, um, but easier to do as you kind of build that network. So I think those two things are really important. um, you know, Always send a LinkedIn message, figure out how the hiring manager is. I think we all are our own versions of, the FBI when we're doing LinkedIn stalking. You could
for
probably figure
sure.
out who does it. ChatGPT can probably help you do that as well and
I
craft
love
the right
LinkedIn
message.
stalking, not gonna lie.
Yeah, for sure. It's the best. And so I think that's really important. 1,000 people are going to apply for a job. and what are the, 1 to 5 things you can do that is more than the next person, right? If 1,000 people apply, 100 of those will send a LinkedIn message and 10 of those will multi-thread, right? So like, how can you just keep pushing that and doing those little things? Best case scenario, someone that works at the company, but that's not always the case. So that's interviewing, or sorry, that's before interviewing. For actual interviewing, I think there have been roles that I've applied for and interviewed for that I was kind of like, this could be interesting, but I was like a little bit mad about. And then there have also been roles I'm like, the one I have now or any of the ones that I've gotten that I'm like, wow, yeah, I want this like so badly. And I will just pour my heart into it and everything I do. And that comes to life in a case study if you make it to that final round and they have a case study, or just like learning more about the business, about the role, about the people that you're interviewing with. I think the biggest thing, honestly, especially in an industry like marketing for me that has filled with personalities, it's like, just how can you be like a good pleasant human on the call and not be stiff, and be, immediately when you're interviewing someone, typically they know within like a couple minutes if they want to hire you or if you're the one. And I think if you can try and be as, easier said than done for sure, but as relaxed as possible, and also just like joyful and pleasant, and someone that you can convince them that, hey, I would probably work with this person, I think that goes a really long way. It's helped me out, at least.
I I love that you said joyful, because I feel like oftentimes interviews can feel so serious,
Yes,
and you
well,
can want
yes.
yeah, like even just going into business school, I feel like sometimes you're taught to be very serious, very professional, as academic and data, all of those things, which are important. But I appreciate the joyful, because people do want to like work with people that they connect with and that they want to spend time with. And I think that can often be something that's kind of lost in the interview preparation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my perspective, no matter who the person is, kill them with kindness, right? Like, there's definitely people that I've interviewed with that are joyful back, and we have a really casual conversation like you and I are having now. There's other people that are stiff as a board and are like, you think, wow, I hope I don't have to work with this person because they seem really like cut, really like dry, right? But the more you can just, yeah, try and be yourself and be as like personable as possible, I think that helps. Again, easier said than done, because interviews, especially like if you really want a job, and on top of that, if you don't have you hate your current job or you don't have a job, like there's a lot of that pressure and it's really hard to not show that. But yeah, those things have helped me out quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I just have a few more questions for you before closing out this conversation, which I've really
Sure.
enjoyed.
Same.
Something I love to learn about from different people, and I think is helpful for people to hear different perspectives on, is work life balance and what that means to different people. What does that mean to you? I know you mentioned there have been chapters in your Canva experience where you had so much to do and it was probably exceptionally busy. Um, and I also know work can sometimes ebb and flow, but I'm just curious, what does it mean to you and what value do you place on it?
Yeah. There's Instagram versus reality here, right? Work life balance, I think, is incredibly important. And it's really easy to get burnt out, for sure. Very easy. It's happened to me several times, multiple roles, probably every role, honestly. I think accepting that throughout the year and throughout the course of a certain project, it will ebb and flow. You'll have busier times, you'll have easier times. That is one thing that I think is important to just be okay with and understand and kind of life plan around. Honestly, like, I know I probably can't travel during certain times because I work's going to be really busy, or other times, yeah, it's time to take off or whatever. So I think that's really, really important for sure. I would say that I preach a work life balance. I am not that great at it myself. I really, and I think that comes from a couple different things. I just love the work that I do, and I love throwing myself into the work, and yeah, figuring out how to put like a theatrical executive dinner on at Sony Studios is just a lot of fun. And I think that's why like I was going back to how, work should be fun. I think that's why I kind of get like sucked into it maybe a little bit more. So I think that's something that I just personally struggle with because I really enjoy it. I think the other piece, in my case at least, is having a really supportive partner. My wife works in creative operations at Lululemon. Met her at the agency at Artrival, so she like gets it and understands it, which I think has been really important and helpful to me because she will have really busy times. I will have really busy times, and we also enjoy like talking about our work to each other because yeah, she's working on a really cool like Olympics campaign, and then I'm doing the stuff with Create and Can. So that has helped a lot. At the same time, you could kind of argue then you're just always talking about work at work or with your partner. So there's a balance there for sure. And I know not everyone has that. I think the last thing I'll say is it's really important to me to have an outlet. For me, sometimes that's my partner. Sometimes that's just mountain biking and like being away from the screen and in the woods with my dog, enjoying nature. Like that is what sort of helps me reset on the weekends or even during the week. And I think that's really, really important. Now, there are times like the month of Cannes, for example, I will be working all day, every day. I know that's going to happen and I will be exhausted after that. And then I'll take vacation for 2 or 3 weeks and like have a hard reset. So planning for that, I think, is important.
For sure. I think it's amazing that you enjoy your work so much and that you found something that feels like it's that good of a fit that you're that excited about it,
Yeah, I feel very, very lucky for sure.
My last question for you is finish this sentence. What matters to be in a job most is
to enjoy it and have fun. Simple as that. I could give you a whole strategic answer or whatever, but I truly think that your work, you should enjoy it. And that does, no matter what, right? Like I really enjoy marketing. I hope lawyers enjoy law as much as possible. Not for me, but that's fine. Like everyone has their own thing, right? I think that's the biggest thing is that, we should be in this like forever pursuit to just enjoy our life and the things that we have to do. And if a large part of that is got to work to make money and, support yourself when you're doing that, it should be joyful.
That's such a great way to wrap up. I love the theme of joy. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and also being so open and humble and sharing all of it. I think people are going to really enjoy learning more about you and from you. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm like, wow, I really do love my job. This is great. But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Of course. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Your Career Unscripted. See you next time.